It's time now for business, and for that I'm joined in the studio by Catherine Bennett from our business desk. Hi, Catherine. Now, the G20 summit kicks off today in Venice. What's going to be the top of the agenda there?
Well, it's going to be global corporate tax reform. 131 countries agreed to a sweeping reform at the beginning of the month, and now it's crunch time for that deal. So there are two parts to the deal. The first part would give countries a share of taxes on profits earned in the country, and the second part is imposing a global minimum corporate tax rate to avoid what's called a race to the bottom, or a competition between countries to see who can offer the lowest tax rate. Now, this deal, agreed with the oversight of the OECD, sets a minimum corporate tax rate of 15%. And the meeting in Venice this weekend is set to iron out some of the kinks in the reform, such as how exemptions might work and what method is going to be used to calculate that tax.
And Catherine, we're turning now to the US. There's set to be a rise in tensions between the Biden administration and China. Tell us more.
Well, Reuters is reporting that the White House is set to add more Chinese companies to its economic blacklist over human rights abuses in Xinjiang. Now, this move could happen as early as today, according to Reuters. The Commerce Department plans to add 14 Chinese companies to what's called the Entity List. Now, that doesn't ban them from the US market, but it does make it harder for them to do business in the country. Entity-listed companies have to apply for licenses and jump through more hoops when they want to receive items from US suppliers. So this latest move will certainly not sweeten the relationship between the US and China, and it's highly probable that China will actually retaliate in some way.
And Catherine, what's happening on the markets today?
Well, European markets actually looking positive. That's possibly as governments are gearing up for what they hope will be a good summer tourist season. The FTSE has bounced up 0.33%. The CAC 40 and the DAX both lifted over 0.5% at the open. Asian indices were in the red, however, after Japan declared a state of emergency because of rising COVID-19 infections. The Nikkei dropped over 0.5%. The Shanghai Composite was also down, and the Kospi fell 1%. However, the Hang Seng Index has advanced almost 1%.
Well, moving now to the United Kingdom, where the cost of Brexit is causing a bit of a hangover for Boris Johnson's government.
That's absolutely right. So we thought it was done and dusted, but no, Brussels and London are once again not seeing eye to eye, this time over the size of the UK's Brexit bill. The EU has said that Britain will have to pay around €47.5 billion as part of its post-Brexit settlement. Now, that's quite a bit higher than the sum that the UK previously publicised, which was around €40 billion. The number was published for the first time in the EU's annual accounts for 2020, and it's a bit embarrassing for the UK Treasury, who has obviously been trying to downplay the financial repercussions of Brexit. The Treasury has said for now that this new sum is just an accounting estimate and doesn't reflect what they'll actually end up paying.
But Catherine, things are looking a little brighter for the country's aviation industry.
That's right. So the UK's government's announcements yesterday caused a surge in bookings for holidays and for flights. The UK said that fully vaccinated UK residents coming back from countries on the government's amber list would not have to quarantine after the 19th of July. EasyJet said that bookings jumped by 400% after those announcements. British Airways said that it had had a 96% increase in website views, and tourism companies were finally seeing passenger numbers get back to a semblance of normal. Well, Spain may be getting ready to roll out the red carpet for British tourists, but France told its citizens on Thursday to stay away. Spain had been banking on the tourism sector to power its post-pandemic recovery, and many in the tourism industry fear this latest development could be the final blow for their businesses. Camille Nedelec reports.
The sun and the beach are ready and waiting for tourists that may now never come. Yeah. France warned its citizens against Spanish holidays on Thursday, and Catalonia moved to ban nightlife from this weekend amid rising COVID infection rates.
Y creo que la clave es en no bajar la guardia, ser prudentes, ser conscientes de cuáles son las recetas para volver a reducir la curva de contagio.
In 2019, the tourism sector contributed 12.4% of GDP. But the flow of tourists into the country dried up when the pandemic hit, and the Spanish economy contracted by over 10%. The OECD expects the economy to pick up again this year, but Madrid was counting on tourism to drive that recovery. Hotel occupancy in May stood at almost 30%, but pre-pandemic that would have been more at around 60%, according to government figures. Almost a quarter of overnight stays were from France, and it's a loss that the sector can ill afford.
El día que dejen de venir los franceses por aquí, Rosa desaparecerá.
Y ningún francés va a venir, porque casi todos ya están cancelando.
The warning against Spain as a safe destination comes despite the rollout of the EU's COVID travel certificate, which was supposed to save the bloc's summer season.
And finally from you, Catherine, there's some good news for nightclubs here in France. They're finally allowed to reopen after 15 months of being closed. But the sector does still face a rather steep uphill battle economically.
It does. Now, this is hopefully the beginning of the return to normal for the sector, but of course there are still a lot of restrictions. They're only allowed to open with 75% capacity for now, and people have to take a COVID-19 test before they go, which could probably put some people off. Since March last year, nightclubs have been surviving only on government handouts, and of the 1,600 nightclubs in France, at least 250 have closed for good. Now, of course, their staff haven't hung around for 15 months waiting for their jobs to come back. They've, of course, found work elsewhere. Half of all people working in nightclubs have left the sector, and so many clubs can't open tonight, even if they wanted to, because they're understaffed. Now, trade unions for the sector say that this means that only 1 in 3 nightclubs will open tonight, so they're asking the government to keep up its financial aid programme for the rest of the year.
Catherine Bennett with a look through the day's top business stories. Thank you very much.